All right, and we are live. Hi to everybody tuning in today. For those who don't know me, my name is Emily Birds. I'm the marketing coordinator here at the MCAA, and I'm very excited to be leading the final live chat of the season today with this great group of folks. Leading us today in today's chat about relating to today's modern athletes and today's players is Samantha Etherington of Louisiana College. Hi, Sam. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having us.
Fantastic. We've got a great group of panelists on today. And first up is Peter Osborn out of Wenatchee Valley College in Washington.
Yes.
Here we go. Hello. Next up is Paul Cammarata out of New York with Brooklyn City FC. Hey, Paul.
Hey, guys.
And newly Kentucky resident, Ms. Kim McGowan out of Thomas More College. How you doing, Kim?
Hey.
All right, and fellow Kentucky resident Dustin Downey out of Western Kentucky University. Hey, Dustin. And finally, Dominic Casciato out of the Brooklyn Italians.
Hello.
Hey, Dominic. All right, fantastic. Well, we're so excited to have everybody on today for this great discussion. Folks, feel free to comment with any questions or tweet us with any questions, and we can ask those at the end. And but I will let Sam take it away.
Okay, so I kind of want to give a bit of background on how I came up with this topic. Actually asked a few friends, and one of the things we talked about is, even though, especially us, we're all pretty young, we're 30 or under, but I still feel like we are a different generation to the kids that are playing today. Whether you're dealing with college kids, whether you're dealing with club kids, as I kind of sit back and watch, just the way they interact with coaches, the way we interact with them is a lot different to how maybe I interacted with my coach as a kid. So I kind of wanted to reach out, see some of you guys' thoughts on that. And, you know, that kind of leads into a first question, which is going to go to Peter. What are some of the struggles you face as a young coach, but dealing with even younger individuals?
Yeah, and to start off, I kind of want to flip that question and talk about some of the advantages first, which will lead to the struggles of being a young coach and coaching young players. So it's pretty easy for me to relate with my young college players. I consider that young because I just went through what they're going through now. I know how hard it is and am empathetic towards trying to balance the demands of playing for a college program with all the schoolwork and social life or lack thereof, and sometimes even a job. So I understand the stresses that most of my players are going through on a day-to-day basis. So it's easy to talk to them and talk to them about how to manage and deal with those stresses, which naturally leads to a lot of open communication and conversations between myself and my players. So that leads me to some of the struggles of being a young coach that I've faced coaching younger individuals. You know, I've recruited all these young men, not just for their talents or soccer abilities, but for their character and personality traits. So naturally, we get along, and sometimes a little too much, and that can be a problem. I took over my program very young. I was 23. And in those first few years, it was difficult at times to distinguish the metaphorical line between friend and coach. So naturally, I wanted to be both and do both. One of my biggest mentors in life is my father, who's also a coach. And he's always told me that you're not just in the business of coaching soccer, you're in the business of coaching young men. And that couldn't be more true. If you're just a coach all the time, you miss out on the special relationships and moments that allow that soccer allows us to build with our team and our players. However, if you're just friend all the time, it becomes incredibly hard to manage your team properly and get what you need out of them and also what they need to get out of you. So with that said, I think my biggest struggle has been trying to find that delicate balance between coach and friend. It's something that I've had to focus on over my coaching career and in developing my own coaching philosophy and coaching style. So that's definitely one of my biggest struggles in being a young coach and working with a younger crowd. So,
have you ever had any issues, or anyone else who's here jump in, of because of the age gap or because of that friend coach, any struggles with respect?
Yeah, I mean, you know, if as much as it seems like our players aren't listening at times, or you know, in a training session or whatever, they're always watching you, and they're always listening to you. And if you slip a little bit or get too relaxed around them, they pick up that behavior. And I think, yeah, it could definitely lead to a little bit of struggle and respect issue. Especially early on, you know, when I was 23, it was my first year. I never really had a head coach to learn from in a college environment. And so I've kind of had to figure it out for myself. And the first couple of years, you know, there are a couple of respect, you know, instances and butting of heads. But as the 4 years have gone on, it's getting quite a bit better. But there's always instances like that. So, yeah.
Okay, nice. So going to Dominic now, does your coaching style differ from the style you were coached under, whether as a kid, as a college player, as a club player? And if it has, or if it hasn't, why do you think that is?
I think it's a good question, Sam. I would say that I didn't just have one coach growing up. Everybody has different coaches as they go, and I think the best coaches will take a little bit from everybody. And sometimes it's not just taking the good stuff from the ones that you like, it's also taking the bad stuff from the ones you don't like and making sure that that doesn't creep into your coaching style. Yeah. So I think, you know, speaking for myself, and I'd love to hear what everybody else has to say about this, you're probably a mix of the coaches that you've had. You take the best stuff from the best ones you've had, the best ones you've been exposed to and worked with, and then you try and avoid the bad stuff from the worst ones. I don't know what everyone else thinks about that.
Jump in. Don't be afraid, guys.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good point, because as young coaches, you know, you've just finished up probably recently playing, you know, like you just touched on, and some of those things are fresh in your mind, and you know, things that you were coached that you didn't like or did like are fresh, and now you're trying to kind of develop your own style and your own leadership qualities and coaching philosophies. And so having some of those ideas of what not to do versus things that you want to do, I think are definitely relevant right now in our coaching careers.
I think when you're thinking about younger coaches, a big struggle that I went through, and I think a lot of people go through, is this idea that, you know, people need to understand that the person you are is the coach you are. And so, you know, Carlo Ancelotti came out and said that leadership can be learned but not imitated. And it's the same thing for coaching. You can't really imitate the coach you want to be. You have to imitate and be the coach that you are. And so we need to be careful of, I learned from this coach, he was a disciplinarian, he was hard, he was strict, but that might not be your personality. So people are going to find out very quickly, especially today's day and age, if you are putting on a facade as a coach and you're not really being true to yourself, the players find out very quickly, and it comes off as disingenuous. It comes off as fake, basically.
I'd agree with that. I'd say a lot of successful coaching comes with maturity, when you know yourself and when you're more comfortable in your own skin. And I think that's something I've probably got better at as I've got older and matured and coached more and sort of learn more about myself, maybe more than learning about the game. It's just being more comfortable in your own skin. I think that's a great point, Paul.
Yeah, and I think one of the things I've come across as I've grew as a coach is, and Dom, you might find this as well, being British, a culture thing as well. So growing up back home, the coaches I dealt with were very, more so not so much authoritative, but told you exactly what they thought and you took it on board. Whereas now it's more of a case, well, kids' feelings get hurt, all that. It's almost not, they're not as, I don't want to say not as tough, but we really have to watch how we say things. Because sometimes I'll say things where in my head I'm like, I could have took that easily, but to the kids, it hits a totally different nerve and throws them off for the rest of the game. So I think we have that little bit of culture side of it, where sometimes if there's coaches from overseas, they coach their kids a completely different way to the way the coaches over here do, just because the environment we grew up playing in is completely different. So that's something that's sprung to mind as well for me. But all very, very good points. we're going to move on to Kim now, and I'm interested to hear this one, because I think with Kim, with you working in the college environment, you're going to have some different, things to talk about as opposed to a club coach. So how do you think players prepare themselves for games? Is it effective, and why or why not?
I think how each player prepares for a game honestly depends on themselves as an individual. I have some girls that are in the locker room and dancing and moving, and they got to laugh and they got to be relaxed. And if they're not doing that, then I probably know this game might be a little stiff for them. And then I have some kids that will walk around with headphones in, and you might get a head nod out of them before the game, but they're trying to mentally focus. As a coach, I like to hopefully have already built that relationship with my players before game time comes around, that I know, hey, this person, like, we can give them a little extra boost of confidence before the game, and they're going to like take that and take it to the next level once they get out on the field. And then there's some where, maybe just a high five and you don't really need to say anything. And so I think there's all different things. I think it's effective, and unless I see maybe something different, like if they had a pregame ritual that they're eating Taco Bell and they're not playing as well, that might be something I step in and say, hey, let's talk about, I don't know, maybe a carb or a salad, something lighter, so we're moving. But unless it's affecting them in a negative way, I'm open to all different ways of the kids getting in that mental mindset of, hey, it's game time, I'm ready to go. And I think that looks different on all different players.
How do you, with college, obviously they have the high workload, maybe at the club level, maybe they play with a little bit more freedom because that's the time to get away from school. In college, school is kind of always lingering over you. Is there times or situations where, you have to speak to someone individually, or is there any issues that come up with the schoolwork side of it and affecting their game performance?
Definitely. Again, individuals get thrown off by different things, but I will tell you, I have some kids on my team that I know during midterm week, probably not the time to joke with them. They're probably already stressed. So if you said a comment that normally they'd laugh at that point, they might be like, what did you say? Like, what am I supposed to do? Are you sure? And so again, normally those weeks I'm aware of, and we try to go lighter on. I mean, I'm not keeping them out there for 2.5 hours, or normally my practices don't last that long anyways, but if we want to go too late, or if I know like, hey, coming away from this away game, we need to make sure the food's at the bus before we go, and we don't have time to stop and sit down. Little things like that. And again, I think if you can get your kids in a routine, that helps tremendously. Same thing with pregame stuff, but also just like traveling or during exams. And if they know, hey, we have study tables these couple days. And then it's always, if a kid comes in your office and they're really stressed out, you can always make exceptions and move on from there. And I think as long as you have open lines of communication, but normally hanging out with the kids each and every day and practicing and training, I know there's some kids that are going to get real uptight and some kids that are going to be like, yeah, I took an exam today, thought it went well.
Yep, I know exactly how you feel.
I was going to speak to that as well, just from my experience. But I think another thing is, young players versus collegiate players is those young players in the club environment. They've got mom and dad to help kind of supervise them and see, now's the time you need to go to bed. This is the food that you should be eating, and they can provide that stuff for them. Where in college you're on your own, and you've got to figure some of those things out yourself. How much sleep do I need? What do I need to eat? And there's nobody really there to guide you. So I think sometimes it takes a little bit of a while for even those younger college players to figure out what it is that they need to perform at the highest level and to get game ready. So as coaches, those are things that I think we have to keep in the back of our mind too, is what are we doing to help educate our players, even at the collegiate level, to help them perform at their highest level.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, especially for freshmen, people like that. It's brand new to them. They don't know anything, and they're thinking, whoa, you can get 5 things from Taco Bell for $5, so we'll go there. But no, great points. We're going to go to Paul. So do you think that by coaches being busier and being more, the technology is available to us just as much as it is to kids, do you think that it causes a bit of distance between us and the players? Are we distracted from them? Do we have less time for them for one-on-one treatment. How do you feel about that?
So I thought it's a really interesting question, and I was talking to people about this last week. As good as technology is, and there's always positives and negatives to it, I think when we think about how do we build in time to our schedule, right? Especially college coaches talk about this all the time. How do I build in one-on-one time into my schedule? I think it's counterproductive, though, because just what you have to do is be in the moment, and technology can help take us out of the moment. Being in a big city, I experience this all the time, and I would ask anyone on this panel, how often do you say, hey, how you doing to someone, with the understanding that they're not actually going to have a conversation with you? And it's just something you say, hey, how you doing, and you walk by, right? But when you're talking to your players and you're in the moment, you should have a conversation where if you're saying, hey, how are you to your player, you want them to expand on that, and you want a conversation to flow from that. Technology can be used for amazing things. We can show players video analysis, show objective information from a match, connect with players on that level. But I think coaches a lot of times aren't thinking of, forget saying, okay, we're going to meet Monday morning at 9:30 and you have a 15-minute block of time with me. In your conversations with your staff, your players, your organization, are you actually in the moment where you're prepared to say, hey, how you doing? And you have a 10-minute conversation unplanned just because someone says, you know what, I'm actually doing poor in school right now. I'm not getting the grades I want, not doing well on the playing field. I don't know why. Psychologically, I'm struggling from a motivational aspect, where most people, I think, would kind of say, oh, I didn't really want you to actually tell me how you were doing. It's just what we say. But I think being in the moment in any walk of life is super important when you're trying to connect, because people want to talk and people want to tell you how they feel. Don't condition them into thinking that you don't actually want to know how they're doing, how their day is, how their family is, what they thought of the last match, and so on.
How do we go about encouraging those kids to come to us? Because for me, you pulled up a great point of the, blocking out the 15-minute sessions, all that stuff. That's main. But for me, that's to just try and get kids to come to the office, because they're so busy all the time and they don't have time to stop by. So, would any of you guys suggest anything in terms of getting your kids to have more conversations with you, or creating those opportunities where we can just have those, conversations?
Some of the things that I do is that, especially in the off season, but sometimes in season, I have lunch dates with my girls. And when I say dates, I show up to the cafeteria and one-on-one, and we talk about everything but soccer. Soccer might be a 5-minute part of it, but, I want to hear about their classes. And I normally ask them questions like, so if there's a dance floor, are you the first one out there, or are you kind of sitting back and watching? And I think sometimes you can get to know people on a different level, because if you only know them dominant on the field, but off the field, they're the last person to talk. I think those are good things to know. I also, walking to and from training sessions, every once in a while I'll pick one, and it's just like a walking buddy, and you're like, yeah, how'd that test go today? Or, oh, so they had that at lunch or the cafeteria. And again, with college kids, anything can be exciting for them. Like, we got out of class early, and I was like, awesome, glad to hear it. Maybe not for the academic reason, but I'm happy that they got some free time where they were like excited about that. And so I always try, and I use the word invest. I always want to invest in the kids, because, again, we're preparing the kids to go off and not play professionally. I mean, my kids are going off into the world, and I want to know that I helped develop them as a player and also as a person. And so I want to know about their family. I want to know that they went to their sister's birthday this weekend and it was fun. I mean, but I think things like that on lunch dates, it takes you out of the office, and so it's more on a neutral territory. And I think to and from practice, sometimes the kids are more relaxed, or after practice, they're like, "Whoo, now that's done. So now what else can I do today?"
Yeah, and I'll speak to your question too, Sam. And it's funny for me, I have an office, and obviously it's different than a club environment. But you'd be surprised with just a jar of candy in your office, what people come rolling in to get some candy every day, and that's just a good way to get that they come in and they start chatting with me, my players. But I think for the club environment, some things that you can do is starts before or after training, and if you're gonna start implementing some type of fun games where kids want to get out there early because they know that there's going to be some sort of prize given that day, or they know at the end of every practice there's a crossbar challenge, and now they're playing for something. Now it kind of gets this energy going before and after practice, and you can kind of get them there earlier. stay later, and some of them will, maybe chat with you there before or after training. And then I just had a question, kind of maybe back to Paul, if you or for anyone, but kind of that idea of if you can't beat them, join them. Are there any sort of technological advances out there that we can say, hey, what do I have within technology that my players will want to use, or maybe I've got something on my computer or on my phone that I can communicate with my players with that, and now there's that common bond between us that will help. I don't know if anybody wants to answer that.
I mean, I think everyone's on Twitter for the most part, and I just found out yesterday in a meeting that Twitter is now for old people, I guess, and Instagram is the new thing, right? So for the most part, everyone's on social media. People have Instagram, people have Twitter, people have Facebook, Snapchat, etc. We want to use technology. This idea that, kids these days is such a far-fetched notion that it's counterproductive. Kids are changing, culture is changing, technology is evolving. We have to be up to date with what actually the landscape looks like. You can't say it was better when there were horse and buggies and there's cars now. You have to evolve with the landscape. So can we say, okay, can you follow your players on Twitter and give them a challenge? At the beginning of the week, say, okay, I've just seen this piece of skill from the game. First person who can replicate it at practice gets something. Or first person who can replicate it at practice, whatever. But you're connecting their medium,
correct,
with the training medium. Because look, for a lot of people, Twitter is now the medium. Instagram is the medium. And so can you connect and engage them on their medium and then translate that onto the pitch?
Exactly.
Because it's tough to say, hey, call me for 30 minutes, right? People don't like to talk on the phone. For better or for worse, younger people hate talking on the phone. It's texting, tweeting, direct messaging on Instagram. So can we kind of meet them halfway and connect with them to then bring them back into where we want them to be on the field and in the classroom and so on?
And that goes back to Sam's question: is the texting, is that prohibiting the one-on-one ability to communicate face to face?
It's almost what comes first, the chicken or the egg, So
I mean, you can have a text that you could text your players and say, hey, I have just finished tagging the bit of video analysis from the game. Let's talk about it. Let's meet for lunch or something. I think if you're dealing in a college environment or environment where you're not around your players because they're in class or they're in the cafeteria, it's definitely a way in which you can connect and say, let's organize a time where we can actually have a catch up.
Yeah.
Because they're going to answer your text sooner than they're going to answer your phone call. Because people don't answer the phone anymore. But a text, they're quick to respond. Oh, great, I'm in the cafeteria, see you in 5 minutes. Or I'm on the quad throwing a Frisbee. Feel free to come by and, we can chat a bit.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think there can be times, or at least for myself, I can get carried away with trying to have a conversation with a player of text, like just back and forth, and we never really get anything achieved. And when I do get something achieved, it's because I'm like, hey, just come by my office, and then we'll get it sorted. So I think it's almost we will accept technology and we have to use it to an extent, but going back to what we've been saying is use the technology to bring kids in and have that one-on-one time, and don't let everything just be through a device. The next question is for Dustin, and I would also like to get maybe Dominic and Paul's insight on this after, because I think it'll be different whether you're a college or a club coach. How do parents affect the way we relate to the modern athlete? Have you seen any changes over the last few years? On the college side, my first thought is recruiting. What do you think, Dustin?
Yeah, no, I think that's a great question, and it's a debate that's kind of taking place kind of across the country right now. And I do coach some club soccer as well, so I can relate, I think, to both. But for me, I think I'm going to kind of do what Peter did and start in a different direction and kind of let's start with American football. I think it's safe to say that American football is the best in the world. And the same thing for American basketball. I think we are the standard across the world for being the best in those sports. And then you start looking, if you want to talk about recruiting and how those kids, you start looking at where those kids come from. And a lot of those kids are being recruited out of high school sports. And if you look at high school sports, you don't pay for high school sports. You know, those kids aren't paying. You know, they're staying after school, and their parents aren't doing anything with them until they pick them up after practice. So when you look at American soccer, it's the pay to play. And so, Kim talked about the word invest. Well, those parents are paying, they're investing money. So at some point, they should have a say in what's going on. It's, you know, whereas I think these other forms of sport, you know, the parents, they don't have as much to say. They're not as involved. But when you're paying, when you're investing in a service, a club coach, you know, I think there's maybe a right to kind of have some sort of say, or to be a little bit more involved in your child's development. In college, I think, again, the idea, I think, is you're kind of letting your child go into a new world to learn for themselves, but also, you know, they're on scholarship. So, you know, the coach is kind of their form of leadership and who's guiding them, and they're having to learn from their own mistakes and things like that without a parent around them. But those are some interesting, I think, things that come about when I think about parents and how they're involved in the club and collegiate levels, and where our country's trying to go, especially with the development academies, and try to get away from this pay-to-play idea. But I would love to kind of hear some other people's thoughts and opinions on that for sure, because, again, I think this is a really good conversation to have, and where our country is right now and where we're trying to go with soccer.
I think you make some great points there, Dustin. And I think the pay-to-play model does give the parents in soccer a different perspective, and maybe a sense of not entitlement, but they should have more input because they're paying a considerable fee for their child to participate. So I think that's a very valid point that you make. I guess how things have evolved over the years, now we have things like Twitter and Facebook and YouTube. Any parent can go onto those websites and find a good coaching session. So they can feel more informed. They may not be more informed, but they can feel like they know how to coach, or they know more about coaching because they've seen it online. So I think parents, maybe some of them are more informed, more educated, because they've taken the effort to educate themselves through these mediums that we have that are great. And then others will see one or two sessions from Pep Guardiola or somebody else and think they know everything and question your methods. So I think it's kind of a double-edged sword. I think the media that people are exposed to now can help to educate the parents, and that's a good thing, because if they're better educated, then you'd hope that they'd reinforce good messages at home with the kids. But then some will take a session from whoever and then try and use that against you and say, well, why are you not doing this with my 7-year-old? You know, why are you not doing patterns of play and things like that, which obviously is not really applicable.
Anyone else?
I think going along what Dustin and Dominic both said, I don't know if people, I think most of us, I'm sure all of us on this panel realize this, but maybe some coaches out there don't realize, but parents are the most critical resource and factor, in my opinion, behind the player playing at a very high level. You know, the environment that the player is going to be in with his family, that's every day. He or she is with us 2-3 times a week, maybe 4 times a week, hour and a half each time. Maybe we get contact with a player maybe 10 hours a week, and that's a lot for most clubs. You're thinking, though, the parents are around this player all the time. Breakfast, dinner, afternoon, night. If we can get them on our side, you know, we want parents to question our methodology. And it's not questioning in the sense of, why would you do this? I think it's dumb. It's questioning in the sense of, why are you doing this? You know, we want them to question that because it shows they have a vested interest in the process. It's the same idea of if a parent went to a parent-teacher conference and said, you know, what's your methodology, or what's your curriculum rather for history this year? What are you teaching the kids in English this year? Because they have a vested interest in their child's development. It's a good thing that they're paying money because, you know, hey, realistically, it gives us a job. the pay-to-play model allows people to make soccer a living. Now, are there bad parts to it? Absolutely. It's too expensive. But we should want parents to understand that they can always come up to us and say, hey, why'd you do this? Why'd you run this session? Why'd you warm the team up this way? Why is your curriculum focusing on this idea at 8 to 11 as compared to this idea from 13 to 15? Because if we educate the parents, the players are going to get better. And if the players get better, our job is made somewhat easier.
My question would be, at what point do you want the players to start asking those questions instead of the parent?
Are you asking me or just the panel?
Well, I guess you specifically, but anyone can answer.
So it's funny, I just had a team meeting with 2 teams on Monday night, 2003 and 2004 girls, so high school and 8th grade girls. And we had the meeting with the players and the parents, and it was very clear, look, you're paying us money. This is a you give us money and we're going to give you a service, basically. You know, it's a kind of caveman way of describing it, but that's what it is. So if you want to talk to us, you're more than welcome to call, email, come up to us anytime. However, if it's a player issue, the player has to come up to us and talk to us about it. So playing time is a player issue, not a parent issue. The parent can always be there because we want them to be comfortable, but the player has to come up to us and say, you know, why did I only get 89 minutes and not the 90 minutes I expected, and so forth. I think we need to start encouraging players to take more accountability for themselves, because when they go to college, we don't want them to be pushovers. We want them to be able to stand up for themselves. So if we can start that in the club environment where they're saying, hey, why'd you run this session? Hey, why did you underload my team in the final game as compared to overloading where the other team was? They're always welcome to ask us this. We need to kind of get away from this idea where the coach knows everything and they say, don't worry about it. How many times we heard a coach tell a player, oh, don't worry about it, right? We can't approach it that way anymore. We have to be able to explain, and it helps us because it develops our ideas better when we're willing to kind of go through things and explain things.
I'm going to put to Peter. Peter, how do parents affect the way you deal with your athletes? Whether it's, you know, when they're in college or before they get to college?
Right. It's actually pretty interesting. The demographic and location where I come is highly Hispanic. And so I don't know if it's a cultural thing or whatever, but the player or the parent involvement, at least where I'm from, is, and especially the high school players that get recruited, it's a little different to the club players like we talked about, like Dustin hit on. It's fairly low. So there's not a lot of interaction with parents, but every now and then there is. And talking to back to what Paul said, I mean, for the first time, I had a parent come up to me and say, why is my son not playing, or why is he not getting minutes? And I was kind of thrown back. I didn't really know how to answer it because I haven't had a lot of communication with the parents in my college experience. So, and I kind of thought to myself, well, why isn't the player coming up to me and expressing, you know, the questions on, hey, coach, what do I need to do to get better? How do I earn more playing time? Those are the kind of players you like to coach. And yeah, so parent involvement where I'm from is it's there, but it's not extremely overwhelming. And yeah, I haven't had to deal with it too much. So
I also, as a college coach, I haven't dealt with parents, or I've never had a parent ask me, like, why isn't my kid playing? I also make it pretty clear when I talk to my team that they're all adults, because I do get them at 17, 18. 17s are the babies on the team. But again, it's part of developing them into a professional that's going to go on into the world and tackle issues on their own. And I will definitely talk about it through that process. But, you know, if they have a problem or if they have a question, I always have an open door policy. And, you know, sometimes my 5'4" frame is too big and scary. They can definitely ask my assistant coaches. And I know sometimes those topics are hard for 18-year-olds to handle because they just came off probably their club team or their high school team where they were playing all the time. And now they're playing against 22-year-old grown women and men now that have had 4 years in the off season with weights and stuff like that. And so they don't always adjust as well. And I think it's a huge push that when you have those open lines of communication, but I will tell you that I inform my team that, like, I'd love to talk to your parents. Don't mind saying hi. Don't mind saying, like, oh, glad vacation went well. But if it came to like a soccer topic, we're probably not going to talk too long.
I completely agree, Kimberly. So
Yeah, I have the same experience at the college level as well. They can talk to us about anything to do with day-to-day life, but if you want to know playing time, why you're not doing this, that, no, that's your job as a player. So yeah, definitely great points. Anyone have any final, questions they want to put out there, or comments on any of the questions we have? Because right now we're done with our questions. Anyone? No? Well,
I would just add, I think it's easy for people to say, oh, well, kids are different these days. But every generation could say that about kids, right? Going all the way back. So I think it's our job as coaches to try and connect with the kids, no matter how different they are. And today's kids and the kids of tomorrow are probably going to be more different because of the advances in technology and moving. So I think it's our job as coaches to try and embrace it rather than stay away from it. And that'll help us with players more.
Yep, no, I agree. And even when we say kids are different these days, even if they weren't, you're always going to have a couple of kids that, are different to the crowd. So no matter what, you've got to adjust to someone. So I think it is important that we continue to adjust to kids. It was great to hear how you guys deal with those adjustments in your different environments. Obviously, it's different from college to high school to club, and everyone has their own methods of dealing with things. So I think this has been pretty informative for the coaches out there, and hopefully everyone enjoyed it. I enjoyed chatting with you guys. So yeah, thanks for being here.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Fantastic, guys. Well, I will pose one final question to you. We did get a question from the audience from fellow 13 under 30 member Ryan Robertson. Ryan's in the high school game, and we touched on this a little bit, but obviously anyone feel free to jump in, Sam, you included. He asks, going with the talk of parents, how do you outline to parents what the communication expectations are between player and coach and between coach and parent? How do you kind of have that conversation and lay that out for parents as you're going in, whether it's the club where you're more likely to interact, or college as you're getting them kind of coming out and doing their own thing?
I would say if I was coaching high school, have a parent meeting at the beginning with the players. So like after cuts are made or after they form their teams, and say like, all right, on this date, we're going to invite your parents to come after practice. We're going to talk about it. And then I think explain just so, and if you do it in front of the players and the coaches, or the players and the parents, then the parents know what's responsible of the players, and the players also know, okay, mom, you're not supposed to talk to coach about that. Or so like, I get that you might have an issue, but I can do it. Or, maybe, but then everyone is well aware of all the, I guess the guidelines of how they should be communicating. But again, I always think communication, if you over communicate, you're probably doing okay on communication, especially with parents, just because they probably have multiple kids and they're running around everywhere. And so if you just like set one thing out for them and they can all go from there, I think that would be a good step moving forward from a high school standpoint. Yes.
I think that's a good question, Ryan. And kind of go back to Paul's point earlier about how important the parents, can be. I know with me personally and my club team, we've done tactical PowerPoints and have done a lot of nutritional meetings. And I think there's ways to get parents involved to make them feel like they're part of it as well. And I think the more they feel a part of it, the less questions they're going to have, the less worries that they're going to have. And like Paul said, they're at home with them 7 days a week, and maybe with me 2 hours a day or 4 hours a week, depending on your practice schedule. So I think if there are ways that you can include them, for example, those PowerPoints and things that I've done with my team, the parents get those. And so when it's game day, the parents know, oh, this is what the team's trying to do. This is what my kid's supposed to be doing. I see that now. And now they're not calling or asking questions about why is my kid doing this or why is my kid doing that. They're a part of it a little bit, and they have a sense of, same thing as I think as a fan base for all these international teams and all this information that's out there for people to be fans. The parents are now feel a part of something. They're part of that fan base, and again, they feel invested, I think, into what their kids are doing. And now I think even they're more on your side. Okay, I know what the coach is doing. How can I help you? How can I help you help my kid? And I think if you can implement some of those ideas to help them be a part of your program, that may be a way to help get them involved and part of your outline.
Fantastic. Well, I appreciate you folks jumping in on that question, and thanks to Ryan for submitting that. And obviously just thanks to everybody for being here today, and Sam for leading a great discussion, and for our panelists for sharing their unique perspectives. And it's been a great discussion that I think people will really enjoy and learn a lot from. And for those, obviously this is our last live chat of the season for this class. So the next time you see these folks on, they'll be alumni. So we're excited to hopefully have a lot of them back and involved with us. And obviously feel free to catch up with us this fall as we get into the 2017-2018 class with the live chats. But for now, we are out. So I thank you guys all for being on today, and thanks everybody watching, and have a great rest of your week. So,
Thanks.
guys.
Thank you.